welcome to the den, the Dingus Den.
Welcome to Shell Talk, the premiere episode where me and Chris here are here to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, to talk about all the different stuff in the world of Turtles, mainly with the focus of talking about the different Turtle comics, but, we may also go off to the other stuff that they do. But right now, we just want to talk about Turtle stuff. Both big Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, especially Chris, but we even want to, get into the comics, and so where better to begin than the powerhouse of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, not only the biggest Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story to come out in recent years, but also arguably the biggest comic to come out in recent years, as it is absolutely massive. Very excited to get into this. And you have anything to say before we delve right into this?
No, let's just jump right in.
Let's jump right in. Shout outs to everybody that's worked on this amazing story, including Kevin Eastman, Peter Laird, Tom Waltz, penciling and inks done by Sal Escorza, Ben Bishop, Isaac Escorza, and Kevin Eastman. Colorist, including Luis Antonio Delgado, Samuel Plata, and Rhonda Pattison. So amazing work, everybody. And as you can tell, it's a big collaborative effort, and they put in so much heart and love into the story. And I think it really shows in the end result. So let's just get right into it, though. First issue, we see the Last Ronin as he's in this future New York City, seeking revenge against Oroku Hiroto, who is Kurai's son, aka Shredder's grandson. So, action-packed issue as the Last Ronin travels to face his foe. But also he talks about his fallen brothers, or talks to his fallen brothers as he travels his way up. Right, yeah. But his plan then gets thwarted and gets heavily injured, which leads him to almost ending himself, which, wow, that's crazy. But
what's that called again?
Senpuku.
That's right.
And he then passes out to wake up to find April, and it's revealed that the Last Ronin is Michelangelo.
Yes.
Yeah, that was awesome.
My favorite turtle.
See, that's the thing is it's not necessarily relevant in this story, but we'll find later on as we talk about turtle stuff. Michelangelo is actually my least favorite turtle. Now that's more of, I'll say right now though, that's more of just from his on-screen appearances versus his comics, as I haven't read too much other Turtles comics outside of this. Part of the reason why we're doing this, but Mikey though is I remember when this story was coming out, everybody was like, who is this Last Ronin's going to be? All the debates of who is it going to be. And, I love the way that one of our friends put it, where he said it was he knew it was only going to be one of the two turtles. Are you going to have it be where it's Leonardo being the leader that loses everybody and must carry on? Or is it going to be the fun turtle that has to essentially grow up and deal with that all on his own?
So it's interesting that you say has to grow up. When look at us, I'm in my 40s, but I still play this, read comics,
right.
And so I don't think it was ever a fact of Mikey having to grow up. Mikey, I think the great thing about Mikey that I love, that's why Mikey's my favorite turtle, because he is a party dude and loves to have fun. But when it comes down to it, he kicks fucking ass.
Sure. Yeah, and seeing him having to, I'm trying to find the right words here, where he, with him being to be the last one, he has to learn to approach things differently, and that's just what really shows in this story.
Yes, that is true.
And so it's fantastic to just see him and see how his character just grew throughout this whole story, and seeing anyone that read this and knows Turtles, they knew how all the Turtles were before all this stuff. As this was like, this is their end story. This is like the Logan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes,
Essentially what this is.
Great analogy.
And so,
What's cool though is even though he's going at it alone, like you said, he's talking to his dead brother still. So even when he's alone, he's never really alone.
yeah.
And so, which I mean is kind of insane. You know, he means he's a little crazy,
Right.
but when you're the last of your kind, or at least you think you are, you know,
it's a lot to take in for sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty, it hits too in a lot of the different moments and so much of it. And so, but yeah, there's so much to it with him being the last Ronin here that really makes it, you know, hit hard and just be, it's part of what makes the story truly great, I think, as well. So it's truly great. One thing that I wanted to ask if you caught, well, wait, so this was your first time reading it. I've read this before.
Yes.
Did you knew Michelangelo was?
Yes.
You would. Okay. So I don't know if you noticed this though, or maybe I think I may have even told you about this, but interesting detail. And I didn't even realize this till after I read the first issue and reread it after seeing it pointed out was if you look into all his thought boxes, they're all orange background.
Yep.
For you know, because
I did notice that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So very cool, very cool detail. That
like I said, the colors were very important in this. Very important in this.
Yes. Fantastic art too, as you just see him. The action sequences in this are great. That's something we just see throughout the whole time. The art that everybody does on this is absolutely fantastic. No matter if it's just a conversation they're having or if it's an epic fight scene, and that's part of that. Just this first issue, it was a big fight as he tries to go up to fight against Oroku, and then there's that big like robot thing that takes him down and puts him back a step there as he gets, you know.
Can we say how even though Mikey is nuts, so is Hiroki Oroko?
They're both very much flawed in their own ways. And so, and you know, there's a lot about him later on, but
like keeping his mother there still and stuff, like it's nuts. She's nuts.
Yeah, that's the other thing. We find out that
right
he's his mother alive
in the first issue, right there. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah. There, well, a lot about him later, but yes. That's he's an interesting antagonist. We'll have a bit to say about him later on. But we see him though as he has this tower out in this like New York City, futuristic New York City.
New York, we'll call it. Let's call it New York.
New York. Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that's what they're always called, you know? Like whenever you have like these post-apocalyptic New Yorks, New York.
New York.
Welcome to New York.
But yeah, and this one you have like all the like Foot Clan soldiers being like synthetics, and you see all the different like flying cars now everywhere, and so the walls built up around the whole city as well.
Yep, and then there's the 3 levels, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's very Blade Runner.
I could see that. I haven't.
Yeah.
But
not as futuristic yet, you know. But it is like this. It's getting there. It's like the early ages of Blade Runner City.
But what's important though is while it is very futuristic in many ways, it still feels like a future you'd expect from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. From the Manhattan, you know.
Yes, I mean the people are still kind of the same. The people like the establishments, the bars, and all that stuff. You know, feel all the same.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, they did a great job, I think, at this futuristic setting for the story. It was great. So very, very cool. So anyway, let's carry on though. Second issue where we start seeing the flashbacks. Showing the aftermath of where the Turtles and Splinter were ambushed. Seeing Splinter's heavily injured. Raphael goes to seek revenge against the Foot Clan alone. So you just see him absolutely slaughter them. I absolutely love this moment as he's just going through and just his unchecked rage here as he just goes through and it's Raphael just essentially his character breaking out here, you know. And
It's
so
being Raph.
Raffing
It's
Raph.
it's Raffing.
Oh
Like
yes.
he's got that attitude. I mean, we always saw it on screen. You know,
Yeah.
he was always that guy, and
It's
so
what happens when he's
there's
unchecked, you know, and
yeah,
then he just lets it out when it's kind of like that tipping point, you know, of how there's that
yeah,
theoretical tipping point for a lot of these heroes that like some tip over the edge, you know. What's that thing? One thing
mm-hmm.
that makes Superman tip over the edge and Negan Injustice, you know. That's that, but with
Yes,
Raphael, as he just completely breaks loose, slaughtering the Foot Clan here, goes to fight Karai,
mm-hmm.
but then dies from her. But
Yes,
I think this is also the event that leaves her also really injured,
yes.
as we
This
see
leads
as
her
well.
mortally injured. Correct.
Yes.
Yes,
And
yes.
so go back to the current time where we see Michelangelo. He meets April's daughter, Casey Marie Jones.
Yeah, she's like Casey. He's like, wait, what? And it
Right.
was what's interesting. Also, so what's interesting about that? Let's talk about that real quick.
Sure.
Is when you first see April at the beginning of this issue, and she's waking up, and she's putting on her arm and her leg, trying to put on her leg, which we'll talk about later why she has those. But when her leg gets away from her and it rolls towards Casey Jones's mask and hockey and golf bag with all his bats and hockey sticks in it, and
Yeah.
she yells Casey, I thought she was like kind of like not like playing around and joking. That's I think what they were trying to make it seem like, because you don't know that who this I didn't know that there was this daughter Casey yet,
Right.
so I didn't know who this girl that had come to find Michelangelo was yet. They called her Casey, I think, but it didn't click that would be April's daughter yet. So it was really interesting for me when we met Casey the daughter. I was like, oh, that's who she was yelling for. She wasn't like jokingly talking to the golf bag and mask saying, hand me the leg. She was actually yelling for her daughter to grab her leg for her.
You know, I didn't read that scene as her yelling, but I could see that interpretation for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Where she's like, fuck, my leg's over there. Casey, can you grab that for me? Come help.
Yeah, I read
leg.
it as a separate way, in a way too, of where it could have been like she was jokingly saying that first scene, but then in the introduction, you think she was still doing that in front of Michelangelo though, but who knows?
Yeah, at first, yes. And I was like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden in comes the daughter, and like, oh, now it all makes sense.
Yeah. You know, important to say too, in that flashback too, that's when we find that Casey Jones and April were engaged. Casey Jones literally just made his proposal, and so we find that there, and so setting that up in the flashback there. But yeah, Casey Marie Jones, big part. And so we're also made aware that they're involved in this underground resistance. And then we also get to see this other kind of flashback where Michelangelo details his journeys to essentially achieving that status of Last Ronin after he left New York City. And so as he travels up, and you know where he accepted that he was the Last Ronin, his sort of self journey there. And I really love the art here too, as this was the art that Kevin Eastman did anytime like this, as it's the classic, harkens back to the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles art from the original Kevin Eastman and Laird comics that they did. And so it's awesome to see a callback to that art style, and some of these issues here is great. So I really liked what they did there.
Yeah, and then what's cool is that like it jumps right back to the book and Splinter's book, which becomes very important in this setting that we're seeing him in the mountains.
Yeah,
very important.
That's important to say, because when we have Mikey here all alone, he carries all the weapons of his fallen brothers, but then not only does he have the weapons of his brothers, but he has the book of like Splinter's teachings and what it means to be what he is. And
because if you notice that he's already got them on his back, in this flashback. So that means before he left New York, he collected them, and we'll talk about, he obviously got Raph's Sai somehow, went back to the scene of the crime, I'm guessing, or something, and which is interesting because the others were still alive at that point. So
yeah, I had that thought. I'm not completely sure.
Yeah. So anyway, but what's cool, I'm gonna point out one more thing of this issue before we talk about
Sure.
the progressed mutagen thing that we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Is in the book, when you see it at the end of the issue, it says no peace. That's important.
Yes.
And as in N-O, peace.
Yes.
As
no
in N-O.
peace.
N-O,
that was great.
peace, no peace. So which is what he does not have right now. And and then what's really cool is the interaction, but I love how they're starting this like seems like an older brother, younger sister relationship is what it felt like at the beginning here. And then at the end, he's like, I'm just trying to decide if you're more like your dad or your mom.
That was funny.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then you see April pulling out Professor Honeycutt's head.
Oh, yes. Oh, Honeycut.
Oh, Honeycutt.
Get into that.
Yeah. But yeah.
Honeycutt.
So but you wanted to talk about we talked about the engagement.
Yes. So we see also I think it's April who brought up about how much this mutagen that, because we all know, obviously turtles are mutants, but the mutagen of this taking place 16 years after they all died is when the story takes place. And so we see that this mutagen progress, so he's actually significantly like stronger and faster, and like he's just enhanced even more so now. And
well, he looks it too. Like
he does.
He's so much buffer.
He's so much fun. And that really shows too. You go back to issue 1 and you can see like all the turtles there, and that like one of the you see them all the turtles on one of these pages there, and it really
it's
shows
that flashback after he's done
the flashback,
when he's done the whole and he goes back. The next page was he thought he was dead, and he thought he was back, so
right.
But now, they were all skinnier and stuff like that, and now he's like a tank, and without the headband on, he's so much more demurring and scary looking, and
yeah,
love it.
Yeah, it's great. So, but let's go on to issue 3 though. Where we get to see Oriko flashback, where he becomes master. He's wanting quote unquote peace. So seeing more of his character here. Current times, we see that Oriko enacts martial law, making it harder for the resistance to do their job, as we see a little bit. Another flashback that shows the Foot Clan ambush, but involves a Stockman, where he leads to this big giant explosion, what ends up killing Leonardo and Casey Jones. Rest in peace. We get other flashbacks.
And this was after Splinter and Donatello had already left for Japan.
Yeah, they had their own excursion over there.
They had to go to their own. They had to go to the peace talks.
The quote unquote peace talks.
Quote unquote peace talks.
Yeah. But so we also get another flashback involving April with the aftermath of the explosion. And so this is where we see her, where she's having to deal with both physical and mental therapy, because this is where she lost her arm and her leg, as we were mentioning earlier. And not only is she having to deal with this physical and mental therapy, but she's also having to deal with having a newborn baby. And then
a shiny new arm, leg, and baby.
Shiny
new
stuff.
Baby as well.
Crazy to think about the situation that she's put in there. Mikey then details his flashback of like what happened was the explosion knocked him out. he couldn't find Donier Splinter, so he left to Japan in hopes of finding them. And so that's when the issue ends with April showing Mikey a new and improved turtle van, or in this case, more of a turtle tank, if you ask me. But
yeah, definitely a turtle tank. Definitely a turtle tank. And she's like, because he's like, this plan's not gonna work. We're not ready. Blah blah blah. And she's like, let me show you something. I got something up my sleeve. First of all, we see more of how insane Oroko Hiroki is, you know, and how nuts he is, and he nearly falls.
Yes, I didn't mention that part specifically at the end, but I think we see a lot of his character both at the beginning and end of this. And other than one moment in the final issue, which we'll get to, this I think kind of shows like the most of his character in a particular issue. And so, and it was really highlighted, especially in that end monologue where he's just talking to himself, and you really get a sense of how crazy he is as he's having just this big monologue to himself, and he thinks he's God, calling him immortal because his robots will protect him at all costs. You know, we only see him jump off a building and the claws of his robots to just catch him so he'll be safe. And so like he's absolutely crazy.
He's nuts. You really see him nuts. You want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
Let's get nuts.
Yeah.
Did you notice that in April's flashback, the boxes were yellow?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Which is really cool. When she was talking about her baby and her arm and her leg and stuff.
Well, one thing I noticed too in this issue, a cool little detail I didn't completely remember picking up, is we see that at this point, a bit of time would have passed from the previous flashback, from the time when Raph and now Leonardo and Casey are because you specifically see a reference where April and Casey are now husband and wife versus before they were just engaged.
Oh, you're right. Yep.
That's what clicked for me. I was like, oh, this is a bit later.
Well, that's because the first ambush when they were engaged, it was a different ambush.
Yeah.
It was because that was Karai's doing. And Karai, by this point, the second ambush was already in a state in that thing and then remember at the beginning of the issue, the grandson is anointed
grandson's anointed up as we see at the beginning. You know, exactly.
So
like but the thing though is like we didn't know exactly how much time with him being anointed. We just knew you know, he got the promotion. He's the head honcho.
Well, and that's the thing though, he wasn't old enough when the first ambush happened, obviously. Because Karai was put into a state where she wasn't capable of leading anymore.
Right. Yes.
Right. So if you notice in that first that first panel, or even maybe the second or third of that first page of the issue, he talks about how you, like the generals we've been leading until you've been old enough to take over, is basically what they said, or he said. Let me go back and see beginning.
We get a bunch of hints of time without not explicitly saying this is the time frame of what everything is, you know.
Oh, it was on the second page. It has been 10 years since my beloved mother and our forever master, Oroko Karai. So he was 6 years old when it happened, because he's 16 now. On the occasion of his 16th year of life and as his manifest duty as sole heir to the throne. So he was 6 years old when the first ambush happened. So it's been 10 years since the first ambush. So that it has been some time. 10 years.
That's a good bit of time.
Yeah. So a very good bit of time. So he's been sitting there, stewing, I guess is a good word.
Stewing.
Getting a little more nuts. because he's nuts right away. Let's just say that. But yeah, so it's been 10 years between the two ambushes. You're right. A good bit of time has passed between them. So Splinter, because when Raph went to go after Karai and died, he thought Splinter was dead.
Yeah.
Remember, he said, "You killed my father," but then we learned 10 years later Splinter's still alive.
Yeah.
So wow, Raph's been gone 10 years between the two
Yeah, that puts
ambushes,
some
which is
perspective
nuts.
into it. It really does.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts. And so, yeah, they put a lot of effort into just putting everything together and making the whole timeline work. Just and it's interesting though too, because I feel like those details aren't up in your face, even though they're present if you read into it.
Yes.
So, but yeah, very cool, very cool. I also just wanted to mention here as well. We have some really cool bits of like with the making of this though too. There's they did a special design archive issue, and Kevin Eastman did all the different panel layouts for this issue, and you can actually see the progression from Eastman's original panel layouts to the pencils to the done full colored page. And the example that's shown in there was in the design archive there for the part of the flashback when Leonardo and Casey falls. And so that's very cool to see as well.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
it's always cool
absolutely.
to see the making comics. It's always a lot more involved than you think. And
so much work goes into it.
So much, and they spent so much time and effort into this story, which is great. And before we jump back into the going to issue 4, while you're here, be sure to like, subscribe, do all that stuff, share it around, tell your friends here that the Dingus Den is here, rocking, talking about a bunch of awesome comics. And so, yeah, let's get into it. Hit that subscribe button.
Issue 4.
Issue 4. Where it begins, seeing a battle where Mikey, Casey, and the Resistance is attacking Stockman's base. We'll then cut back in time a little bit to see Mikey teach Casey how to fight. Mikey then tells how he got to Japan, where he found Master Shinichiro. I'm going to assume it's that one. Who then tells him about the final ambush.
Yeah, that's a Shinichiro. Yeah.
So anyway,
if you don't say it with a Japanese accent, it sounds weird.
that's always how you have to. It helps figure out the pronunciation with how they say their stuff.
Yeah. And as we go, we're gonna meet probably a lot of these characters some other times, and so you'll probably learn the names as we go. Start to figure it out.
But yeah, he tells Mikey about the final ambush of the Foot Clan that ended Donatello and Splinter. And that leaves Mikey alone. And that leads into another flashback that he told April that we mentioned before. And so I like how they made those flashbacks flow there. I thought was cool.
Agreed.
And so you didn't necessarily realize it has a missing chapter until then, and you're like, oh, that can come back to what it's going full circle a little bit here in its own ways. And so but yeah, Mikey then questions April about Casey's enhanced abilities, as we see they actually have this from their training moment. And so that's where they kind of find out they were sort of giving off some sort of radiation or something, and didn't become evident until her, I guess, some sort of side effect that they just didn't realize. So
and think about all the times when we've watched the cartoon, and there's times where mutagen gets spilled. I mean, I'm sure splashes happen,
Yeah.
But they're saying it's really weird to me that they're saying it just radiated off of the turtles.
It's the whole Dr. Manhattan situation from
yes,
and so it's what it is. And so, but but in this case, it doesn't necessarily kill her. It just makes Casey or Casey Jr., if you will, a little more enhanced.
Casey Jr. That's weird to see Casey Jr. I like it.
But yeah, but then I actually really like this, how the last bit of the issue goes, though. I thought it was really cool how you see all the resistance there with Mikey, April, Casey. They're all planning there, figuring out like how to attack Stockman's base of operations here. Stockman's island. He has his whole own island. And so
Roosevelt Island is a real island.
Well, yes.
But
like it's his now. So
it's his island. If you've seen Braveheart, it's his island.
So
I don't understand.
So, but yeah, it's Stockman's island now. And so, but I really like this point though, where they're planning and then cutting to the action, and it's like you see all their plans, and then you kind of like see like their plans are getting screwed up. Yep. And then they go to the next part of their plan and get screwed up a little more. And so it was a really cool cuts between planning and action. And
yeah, it's like they would do it in a movie where as they're talking as a voiceover for the plan, it shows it happening.
That's a very good point. It's part of what I think really what made it work well is that you could just it really did feel cinematic in your head as you're it's exactly how you're envisioning it. You're spot on there. And then all of a sudden the turtle tank just goes into action there. And we see that the heroes persevere, and we see Honeycutt that we haven't said too much about Honeycutt, but Honeycutt's played a big part in this. As Honeycutt was like the main reason why Stockman attacked, leading to the death of Leo and Casey, because he was wanting Honeycutt. And yeah,
you're gonna love this connection I made for Honeycutt. Honeycutt is the psycho pirate of the Last Ronin.
Psycho pirate, sure.
Because he's the one that is used, and he basically sacrifices himself to do this overlying thing that ultimately helps the rest of them complete the whole plan.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like so much of the technologies of the city is powered by Stockman. So Honeycutt gets in there. He says this 3 different times of the issue of "You shall not pass."
Yeah,
he did it in the initial flashback, and then he did it twice there at the end when he was ending himself.
Tolkien reference
to do it all. Well, I think that's more of a script thing and not, but movie reference. I don't think that was actually in the script or written in the book, but besides the point, I my mind went there, and I'm sure almost everybody's did.
Yes,
going there,
absolutely.
I just found it funny a little bit too, but he gets his revenge, and the heroes win the battle. But then
Stockman is disintegrated.
Oh yeah, that was wild. So yeah, heroes won the battle, but have not won the war. So it ends there. But with this issue, that is where we got the last of the flashbacks, though.
Yeah, it's cool how his flashbacks are that old school style, and then when they're showing others flashbacks, they do it full color. It really helped differentiate that.
Yeah,
although April had some black and white.
I was about to say that's the only exception to that.
Yeah.
It was well, I think it was like a difference of when they were telling their personal tale, and then you saw the different ones of when the turtles were falling from
right. One was the black and whites were stories being told, while the other ones were just jumping to that actual action. Like in a movie, it's the black and whites are voiceover stories, and the other ones are straight action stories. I mean, it's crazy how, like you said, how cinematic this is.
I think it's part of what makes it work really well, and you could tell with all the planning of it, they did a fantastic job for it to just all come together in the way it did to really make it feel the way it is. And so, but yeah, I absolutely love both of the kinds of flashbacks. I guess first let's talk about the Eastman art ones, as that was just, I love seeing Eastman art back in a way integrated into the story to make it work as well. And I really I think it was great to have Eastman doing like official art like that. and interior art. Like he'll do cover arts here and there, but like it was awesome to see it in this way, I thought. And so I absolutely loved seeing that, and the differentiation of that is where talking about is great.
Yeah, especially for Mikey, because a lot of it was in these different landscapes where you can use the different shading and the blacks with the whites and the grays to really accentuate the snow, the cobblestone, the mountain. Just from this panel I'm looking at, the clouds, the trees, everything, is just easily the moon stands out, even though it's just in that black and white and gray.
Yeah, absolutely. And so his art is just great, fantastic. That's one part of what makes the I mean, you could obviously tell like it's a bit more progressed from the original Turtle comics, but like it's just his style that's great, and being able to do that stuff, and we'll eventually get to talking about some of those original Turtle stuff. So stay tuned for other stuff we'll be doing. But
absolutely.
But yeah, no, those flashbacks were great, and then the really heavy hitting flashbacks when you're seeing how all the different ambushes essentially and I know, it hurts.
I got emotional.
Yeah,
every time we lost one or two,
and
it hit hard.
And it doesn't help too when they have that final page for each one of those flashbacks where it's just the weapon remaining.
Oh, and the Casey mask. Oh my god.
Casey mask and
and the way that
up there and and
then watching Donatello and Splinter just get covered in arrows. Oh my god. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was
getting a little emotional here.
They made them feel really powerful, and even though I just very briefly went over like essentially all the story stuff, but especially the flashbacks, but each of those flashbacks really do get into the current situation of it, which is great. And just you really get to see though that like even though the turtles like by description are easily falling, they're really not though. Like there are hordes of well planned well, the way of Raphael is just fitting because that was his character, right?
Yes.
Of them mindlessly going in after that snap we talked about. But the other two things were just two different kinds of well-planned ambushes where they were just completely overwhelmed. They couldn't do anything. They held their own both ways. Yes. And then there they are, sadly. And so, yeah.
Which is kind of very interesting, and we'll talk about this for the last issue because with how overwhelmed they were in those two ambushes, and then of course the raft thing, with how much force they had, those were really strong, well trained, foreshadowing there, fighting force.
Yeah.
So. And they were all human. Except for the mousers, the flying mousers and shit. They flying it?
Yeah. Those flashbacks were great though. It was great to see all the details to fill in the gaps of the story. But then from here point on, we it's just all current time stuff. It now wraps up the main stuff. And so we get into Casey's mutagen, where we already touched on that a little bit.
Yes.
But with her being enhanced now is interesting. But now she's also Mikey's student. And I love that scene too of where they're kind of just like training a bit there, and he's like teaching her some tips here and there, like I
insulting her.
Insulting
her at the same time because she's got to learn how to be able to take it
right from her enemies.
Her enemy's going to be insulting her all day long as they fight.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was just great though because you're seeing Mikey become a teacher now.
Yes, he's evolving. Not just physically he's evolved, but mentally he's evolving.
Yeah.
And I love though that because like I said, then soon afterwards we learn about Casey and her mutagen. But in that scene where he's training her, he doesn't let up and give an inch to let her know that he knows that she's enhanced.
Right.
He is just still beating her down, telling her she's too slow, not quick enough. And obviously some of the things she does, like screaming when she's going after her opponent, is stupid for a ninja to do. So
Right.
he's right on some of those. But like he talks to April, he's like, how long have you known? Oh,
Right.
well, did some blood work and found out. And that's why I took your blood too, so I could compare. And then
Right. Going full circle there about why she was doing all those samples earlier on in the book that we didn't mention, but
exactly.
everything goes full circle in this. Like everything, like there's a bunch of circles that circle back around throughout this whole story, and some of them starting to go full circle in issue 4, and then the rest in issue 5. But yeah, just an example of one of those ways of where things going back around to what happened before.
Yeah, and things not only are things crazy on over there, with that, but Baxter Stockman, what's up with him?
Yeah, they're the whole confrontation there, and seeing that little bit of like revenge story there, like this is like April's revenge story, and then you have Mikey's overall revenge story in a way,
Yeah.
And so
because Baxter Stockman's who killed Casey Jones.
Yeah. And I love
she
that
didn't
moment.
even know she was pregnant, with her daughter. So her daughters never met Casey,
Right.
So big emotion there.
And I love the moment too of where she gets that like big like revenge punch against
yeah.
And obviously it doesn't do much to him because he's like a little bit of
he's enhanced now. Like a
cyborg-ish sort of dude now.
Yeah.
Evil cyborg now, and so
evil booyah!
But then Honeycutt does his thing. But yeah, it's cool, it's cool to see Baxter Stockman is like that other sort of like second in command main villain, and he's then taken down here. So very cool to see.
And now on to the main bad guy.
Issue 5, where chaos everywhere in the streets of New York City. Mikey makes his way to Oroku as he just slaughters all these different Foot Clan soldiers. You see all the bodies being left.
Well, yeah, because all the synths are gone. So this circles back to my thing about the training is these humans are not well trained anymore because it's these synths who have been doing everything.
Yeah.
So Mikey just like dispatches them easily.
Yeah, he goes through them easily. He runs into a couple of like big guards.
The big guy.
And once a robot, and he just runs it. He takes care of them too. Takes only a little more effort, but then he runs into Oroku himself, who this is where you see that crazy moment where he just kills his mother, and you really realize how demented he is. Of where he literally kept her alive because he wanted her to suffer for all that she made him suffer.
Because she left him.
Yeah. And then
Venom issues much.
But he then activates his liquid metal suit.
Yeah, which is nuts.
Yeah. I thought it was like if the special Terminators from T2 was an armor, That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, liquid nitrogen armor. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, Mikey and Oroku have just this giant battle, and that's like essentially like majority of this issue is this big epic battle between them two, and amazing art with it and everything. Meanwhile, Casey helps the resistance. There's this flood that starts happening because of all the technology going out and everything. So she helps April to get the pump working so they don't lose their base and damage all the stuff, the lower parts there that the flood would impact. And so
let's mention real quick though that before those pumps were fixed, Mikey and Oroku Hiroki ended up in the sewers.
Well, yeah, their battle was in a lot of different places as they gone through, and so for sure. But yes, good point there. So yeah, but yeah, going back to the fight, their fight just keeps on going, and finally they get down to the final muddy area, where they're all,
which happens because the pumps were fixed.
Yeah,
It does. That's why.
That's
It's
true.
because the
Yeah,
pumps got fixed,
that's
and
true.
so that was important. That they ended
Yeah,
up down there. Pumps get fixed, and that swooshes that into that muddy area from the first issue.
Yeah, and great for another full circle moment there.
Full circle, yeah.
Also, that fight that they were doing there in the muddy area reminded me a lot of the Dark Knight Returns when he fights against that one big mutant and Batman's all muddied in the area. It's done very similarly. But that's what I thought of, and I even got the hint a little bit before they went into that area as well of how they were going. But another thing there, and so, but they're big. The whole time during the fight, though, Mikey is trying to figure out like how can I beat Oroku with his special liquid armor, as anytime he does anything, it just regenerates, right? And so, but the armor then starts malfunctioning just as the fight continues on, and eventually it just stops working, especially by the time while they're down there at the big muddy area now, to where Mikey then finally figures out how to beat him, but Oroku then does this big electrical self-destruct that ends himself, but also taking out Michelangelo with him. Casey finds him, and then Mikey's final moment, he gives Casey his book, saying the last lesson is important, which is the no peace.
Now it's KNOW. He edited it and added the K and the W to say no peace. Which is freaking like another full circle moment.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So anyway,
amazing.
April arrives and also says goodbye to Mikey, as Mikey then wakes up to find all his brothers waiting for him. You see they have their race across New York, and then
all skinny and stuff again.
Yeah, as they were, and they're like prime as you think of them, right?
Yeah.
So, and to find Casey Jones and Splinter, they were all together. The end. What a way to end there, as it harkens back to that.
Yeah.
That's the part that hit me in the feels the most, of when you have them all together. And you got a little bit of the hint in the first issue of that wasn't necessarily a flashback there, but it was like Mikey started going there into that world, but then he gets pulled back in.
Yeah. So, well, you could kind of tell in that first issue, because look at the lighting, the way they colored it. They gave it this like, even in the
yellowy,
first issue,
heavenly sort of feel.
Yeah. So. Even in the first issue, they gave it that. So, and what he had just done, it was very clear that it was like a afterlife kind of place.
Yeah.
So sure. I love again where the coloring has that huge effect. And they always, whenever they having the heart monitor stuff in first issue to the last issue, again, a full circle, they just brilliantly done.
And the art just really stands out too throughout. I mean, not just the entire series, obviously, but like particularly in their fight of like so much of this was just their fight together that really stood out too. As I think they made sure to like, although all the fights were really well done, they made sure to save the big epic one-on-one fight here. Bring in the epic action here, which is great. Absolutely amazing. But Mikey.
Yeah, and he goes. Gone. Yeah, and they're all the turtles are gone, and they're in their afterlife, and he's like, I love how they're talking about New York smell. And then at the end, Mikey's like, yeah, it does. It smells like home.
Right. Yeah.
So
they're all up there now. It really hits. Like that was the part for me in particular with them all in the I guess heaven sequence, if you will, is what hit hardest for me, and that's how it ends there too. It's just like, holy crap, this is how you're ending it here. And so
So, and it'll be interesting because, we're going to be going through all these comics that take place prior to this story. And so I'm wondering if we're going to get, if there are issues and that we're going to read where where we're going to be hit as hard as this. And I don't think there are, but you never know. You never know.
I don't even know if this is a thing necessarily set in the main continuity, you know.
That's true too. Exactly.
So I don't think so. Although, you know, if we're wrong, let me know or let us know, you know.
Yes, let us know in the comments, please.
And so
but I don't think it is, because remember, turtles are always have these different dimensions and stuff like that. So it could be a different dimension. Exactly.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
Sure. But yeah, we see this is the last issue too, with how it ended up though. Michelangelo talking with his brothers, the ghost brothers, the ghost sort of talk as he talks with himself. It's all in his head there. And I know we touched a little bit on this, but like I think that this was a big part of his character too, was like they had the different moments talking in all the other issues, but this was the first time where they had like a huge argument and like he completely shut him out. And it's just like, wow, okay.
Well, he wanted them to leave him alone, because he was like, stop telling me what to do. You guys are worse than we were alive. What the heck? Leave me alone. And then he dies and he's just happy to be back with them.
Yeah.
Because I think for him, the most frustrating thing is not being able to put his arms around them, not being able to hug them.
Sure.
To smell the same New York that they're smelling.
Sure. Absolutely.
You know, all those things that are just, you know, family.
Yeah. How did you like the whole aspect of Michelangelo talking with them throughout the entire series?
I loved it. Loved it.
Yeah.
Because anybody with grief like that is going to do that. I'd still talk to my dead dog's ashes, you know?
Sure. Yeah, it's especially when that's all you know, it's your brothers for life. That
and he was alone. So what else is he gonna do?
That's true.
It's like worse. Think they were his Wilson. He didn't have a volleyball to talk to. So he had his, you know, and I think part of the thing that helped manifest them to him was carrying their weapons around.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they would have had that profound of they would have been as much in his head if he didn't carry those weapons around.
No, those weapons were definitely like the physical embodiments of what's left of him, and why he carried them around. And so it was a huge part of his character is that throughout the whole series, which is just utterly fantastic. But yeah, that was great. Michelangelo was just a fantastic. Like, listen, I'll say this: even though Mikey is my least favorite turtle, when you have all the four together, Mikey, at the end of the day, I think it hits the hardest when he's the one left alone, and it's great to see them carry on with that idea of making him be the last one, and it works phenomenally well for him to carry throughout this entire series. And it's part of what makes this series just work phenomenally well.
Like I said, I love Mikey because of his whole party attitude, but he puts in the work when he needs to, and he's loyal to his brothers. He's the heart and soul of the Turtles, in my opinion. Sure. And so having him as the Last Ronin, being that heart and soul of the Turtles to get the revenge on them is perfect to me. Perfect. 10 out of 10 on this story.
It's an amazing story. Yeah. It's one of the best ever comic stories of recent years, if not the best. I don't put that lightly. There's so much that we just didn't necessarily cover. That's little details that's carried throughout this. Because our goal through this series is we're just going through like the overall turtle stuff of what's happened as we go through and read it all for a first time. For the most of it. Like, this is one of the few things I've read before, but a lot of it I haven't read. So we're excited to just go through and delve into it. We have one other thing we want to talk about here, and that is Oroku Hiroto as the antagonist here, with his mother and all that. We already touched on that a little bit, but like, how did you think he worked as an antagonist overall? Did you like him? Dislike him?
I did, because he had a motivation.
Yeah.
An antagonist without a motivation is a boring antagonist. This guy had a motivation. He wanted that turtle fucking dead from the very beginning. And I think that, you know, making them both the antagonist and the protagonist kind of nuts and wanting revenge on the other, it made him the perfect antagonist, because for him, Mikey was the turtle that got away. He didn't realize that he was alive. He was like, he thought he got Mikey in the ambush.
Yeah.
You know? And so, because then he didn't realize Mikey came to Japan, looked for Splinter and Donnie, and then went up in the mountains and became the
100%.
Last Ronin. So
100%.
that drove him even more nuts, which made it great. He had much more motivation.
Yes. 100% agree. The only thing I want to add on to that too is I think it's great too for when you're telling the story set in this future. You also have that sense of familiarity where he's leading the Foot Clan. So at the end of the day, it's still very much about what Turtles harken back to the original Turtle stuff. Or not, or shortly after. I don't remember exactly when it got into like the whole different clan wars between the Foot Clan and the other clan there. But it very much goes into that too, you know, keeping that sense of familiarity. And so it just worked great as having that overall antagonist to just leading the threat there. And it's great. And so it was fantastic. It worked very well.
Yeah. And because it takes place 16 years. So it's basically 6 years after the second ambush is what this is, I believe. Or no, 16 years after the second ambush.
16 years,
16 years after the second ambush. So I love, like we talked about, the technology is kind of getting there. So like making him have that cool technological suit was perfect too.
Yeah,
like,
it was great. It was great.
Yeah,
it was great. One more thing to go in here. It was the epilogue. Not going to talk too much about this, but we just see Casey keeping up with her training alone. You know, keeping up with her, I guess, promise, if you will. You know, or accepting, you know, carrying the role there, which was great. But then when it is also revealed that we get a new generation of Turtles coming, and now they're currently coming out with, I think they're almost done with it. In the next few months, I think it'll be done, of the Last Ronin sequel, Re-Evolution, which is the main sequel to this. But then there's another little tie-in arc, Lost Years, and so kind of leads into this next generation. So Lost Years, I think it could be one of the ones we might do next. I don't know. So we'll look into it. We don't know exactly what we're doing next, but new generation of Turtles where. You know what? We'll save that talk for the next generation for when we get into getting to know them a little bit and Lost Years and Re-Evolution too. So, or Last Ronin 2 Re-Evolution is what's called.
Re-Evolution. Yep.
So
yeah, so quickly about this epilogue, it's cool that she is continuing the training, because one thing we didn't bring up about issue 5 is how she tells April that she knows she's a mutant, and so she feels this much more connected to the Turtles or she always felt this connection to the Turtles. So it's perfect that she's raising these new Turtles. And so it's going to be like, she's now, it's like they're Mikey's grandkids too, or something.
Setting up the next generation here, and it works, you know, and so
it does.
We'll see what happens with that as that goes into Re-Evolution 2. Or to Re-Evolution. I don't know why I say it that way. Anyway, thank you so much for joining us for this very special first episode of Shell Talk. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and comment down below what you thought. What do you think? What do you want out of us from Shell Talk? As there's lots of Turtle stuff to get into. Let us know what you want. We're excited to get.
And go read The Last Ronin.
And yes, exactly. Go read Last Ronin.
Go read it. Share this video so others get interested in it and like it. So
all that stuff. And that's an end to this first episode of Shell Talk. Thank you, everybody.
Cowabunga.
Cowabunga. Bye.
Bye.